Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Thanks for joining us. So the media out there really trying to sell this Biden primary victory in South Carolina. Now, number one, there's really nobody running against the president. And here's the thing. Obama, when he was running for re-election, he was also unopposed. But here's the difference between those two situations. There are Democrats who not only do they want to run against Joe Biden, but they should be running against Joe Biden based on how unpopular he is. And let's face it, there have been a lot of legislative failures with this. There's been a lot of failures, legislative and otherwise. His brain is failing just right before our eyes. In other words, there really should be an actual race for the Democrats in the primary. You know, Obama, love him or hate him, I mean, at the very least, he could string two sentences together when he ran unopposed, when he was running for re-election. But Joe Biden is a completely different story. And so I would say that the media, number one, stop trying to sell South Carolina as a major victory for Joe Biden, because it wasn't. And the turnout will tell you that it was a horrible turnout. You know how many South Carolinians came out to vote for Joe Biden? All of 131,000. Now that is low. That is really low. Even for a situation like this where nobody's running against Biden, still. They say that is 4% of registered voters statewide. And so the media is trying to sell, oh, this was a tidal wave for Joe Biden. It really wasn't. People didn't even want to make a statement vote when it came to Joe Biden. How does 2024 South Carolina Democrat turnout compare to previous years? Well, in 2020, 540,000 people, around 16% of voters, participated in the Democrat primary, while in 2016, 373,063, more than 12%, did the same. In 2012, former President Barack Obama ran unopposed in the primary, but in 2008, 532,151 turned out, according to, they say, accounting for around 23% of registered voters, and on it goes. The point I'm making is that not a lot of people came out for Joe Biden. So now the question is that because he is incredibly unpopular? Or is it because there's no competition? Because the Democrat Party will not allow any competition? I think that's one of the big questions that folks need to answer. Now, this is Nikki Haley. Kent played this in the news.
But you got to acknowledge the fact he can't win a general election.
Well, Nikki Haley acknowledged that, according to the polling, Donald Trump is beating Joe Biden in 7 battleground states.
But you got to acknowledge the fact he can't win a general election.
Well, Nikki Haley acknowledged the fact that this NBC News poll shows that Donald Trump not only has the support, the clear support of the Republican Party, but he's also leading Joe Biden among independents, for example. So if Nikki Haley is out there and she's on the campaign trail and she's saying, you know, we have to acknowledge that Donald Trump can't win a general election, will you acknowledge that you can't win the Republican primary, Nikki Haley? Inquiring minds want to know. Because I think the polling clearly shows that Donald Trump can win a general election. You can't even get past the primary, I'd say, to Nikki Haley. So anyway, there's this big news over the weekend. This came down, I think it was on Sunday. This NBC News poll, Democrats are absolutely freaking out. It's like hair on fire, pants on fire, whatever it is. But they are freaking out about this poll. And basically, the poll shows that Donald Trump is kicking the living you-know-what out of Joe Biden. In almost every single category, Joe Biden is losing to Donald Trump by a wide margin. This big poll from NBC News that everybody's talking, well, no, I don't know if, I'm not sure if CNN is reporting on this, but
now leads Joe Biden If it's the general election and it's Trump versus Biden, in our poll, Donald Trump now leads Joe Biden by 5 points. Compare that to the last time we polled back in November. Trump was ahead then, but it was only by 2 points.
All right, so Donald Trump leading 47 to 42% in a general election poll. By the way, that is Steve Kornacki with NBC News. And the point that Kornacki makes is that Donald Trump is rising and Joe Biden is falling. And that is significant for both candidates.
For the first time in November, Donald Trump polled ahead in our poll, and now at 5 points. This is the biggest lead NBC has ever had in 16 polls for Donald Trump over Joe Biden.
Now, here's the deal. They went back all the way to the last election. And back in 2019, they have never seen a gap this wide between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, with Donald Trump leading. And it's all about the economy and the border. So when they ask the question, who do you trust on the economy? Trump is at 55%. Biden is at 33%. Who do you trust on the border? Donald Trump is up 57 to 22%. Somewhere out there, there are 22% of the American people who actually trust Joe Biden more with the border than Donald Trump. You might want to check their polls. Overall job approval is for Joe Biden is only at 37%. You got 60% of the American people that disapprove of Joe Biden. You know, last week we talked about that polling that showed that Joe Biden was ahead. And that flew in the face of all of the other polling. And so the question that, you know, myself and others asked is, all right, so is this sort of an outlier, or is this the beginning of a new trend? Well, according to this NBC News poll, the poll from last week, that was, nothing but an outlier, as they say. Among presidents running for re-election last several cycles, 2004, George Bush's approval rating was at 54%. Trump was at 46% running for re-election. Barack Obama was at 49%, and Joe Biden is at 37%. So, yeah, this is a big issue for Joe Biden. Only 23% believe Joe Biden has the mental capacity to serve. And by the way, that number is going down. The more people see of Joe Biden, the less they believe that he has the capacity, the mental capacity to serve. Now, this is what I find particularly fascinating, and I mentioned this a few minutes ago. Only 32% believe that Joe Biden is competent and effective. 48% believe that Donald Trump is competent and effective, and that is up from 38% in 2020. In other words, the more people see of Joe Biden, the better Donald Trump looks. I think some knucklehead talk show host in Nashville, Tennessee told you that was going to happen. I'm just saying. Couple of other things. I promised that I would do this, so I will. Who is Donald Trump going to pick as his running mate? Well, he may have tipped his hand over the weekend when he said,
"You must really hate her."
I just love you.
No, that's why he's a great politician.
Donald Trump is talking about Tim Scott. You remember that. And this is what he told Maria Bartiromo on Fox News. I think maybe it was Fox Business, but whatever. This is what the former president said about Tim Scott. And
I told Tim Scott this, so a lot of people like Tim Scott. I called him and I said, "You're a much better candidate for me than you are for yourself." When I watched him, he was fine, he was good, but he was very low-key, etc., etc. I watched him in the last week defending me and sticking up for me and fighting for me. He's been a real tiger. He's been incredible. And others have too.
Yeah, he also, by the way, mentioned Kristi Noem, but the bottom line is that is pretty good endorsement for Tim Scott, although Trump was very careful not to really tip his hand too much.